Hey, Josh, what's going on, man?
Hey James, welcome back. Episode 22, our 22nd
we're
episode
coming up.
of
We're
the
coming up to halfway through a year, man. How do you?
number 17 pick Detroit Lions. Who do you have them going with?
This is one I think they could go a lot of different ways, but I really think the Lions are going to prioritize outside pass rush. Getting relief off of Aiden Hutchinson was a
Mm,
big issue last year. And obviously they had defensive struggles, and one of the biggest struggles for them was getting after the quarterback to the best of their ability. They invested in interior defensive line. I think they go outside edge. And right here, I have Kedrick Falk from Auburn.
okay.
I think he's the next best man up.
hmm
He has fantastic size and he's a little bit different. Hutchinson is definitely more of a kind of technical savvy guy, and Kedrick Falk is a guy that's going to push pull you, use those big time long arms. He's great in those short yarded situations, but his pass rush needs to improve. And I think the
hmm
Lions can give him some time, and especially in a defensive line room with Aiden Hutchinson, I think this is a perfect place for him to develop and get that 1-2 pass rush that the Lions desperately need.
Yeah, I like Kendrick Falk is so interesting to me. And you kind of said it. He made and like this past year in college, he had 2.5, 3.5 sacks. And yes, I know sacks aren't everything. But with how Shamir Stewart's season went last year with the Bengals, to me, there's a lot of comparisons. Great run stuffer, size wise, play style. And I think that's why I've been seeing him so like over everywhere on people's boards. So with
Yeah.
that kind of being said, number 17 pick, I am actually going on the opposite. I'm going to go Spencer Fano here.
Yeah.
I think
Okay. I like that.
I think there's been talks of Taylor Decker, the starting left tackle, potentially retiring because of so many injuries in the past. Dan Skipper, who has been like rotational swing tackle slash starter, is retired. I think Spencer Fano can come in and immediately be their left tackle.
Yeah. All right. I like that.
Yeah. So with the 18th pick, Minnesota Vikings, this is another very interesting one. I think they go Jermon McCoy here. I think
Okay.
their corner room has been very questionable. Even, Byron Murphy came in, has been there for a few years, a lot of money. He still is a very intriguing player. So to me, I think you just go best possible secondary with, especially if Harrison Smith does end up retiring this offseason, which kind of looking like it. I think you just go best possible player, best possible secondary. Go Jermon McCoy.
Yeah, actually, I have secondary here too, but it's not the one you were
hmm
thinking of. I think we kind of flipped it, and I have
Yeah.
Mansour Delane here.
All right.
Again, fantastic guy at LSU. The Vikings secondary room is definitely questionable. I would go safety if there was options there, but I don't
Yep.
really think the safety class is that deep outside of Caleb Downs. And I don't see them wasting a pick on that. I think they go with a fantastic corner you can place right next to Byron Murphy. He has the production. Lanky size is maybe a little bit of an iffy, but I think, fatten him up a little bit and give him some time. And I think he's could be a perfect 1-2 punch with Minnesota.
Yeah, I like that one. All right, James. 10th pick, Carolina Panthers. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I think the Panthers, I was looking up and down at this board,
hmm
and their biggest need by far is linebacker. Their linebacking room is really bad. And they had, the Christian Roseman, the main guy who was there, was mostly free agent. They have CJ Allen from
Okay.
Georgia here. Georgia linebackers overall in the NFL have been fantastic. CJ Allen is a big dude.
hmm
Plays that Mike linebacker position. He's definitely, I'd say, a little bit more of a raw talent on that linebacking, as a linebacker, but he is a physical freak, super athletic, had some really solid production at Georgia. He just has those tangible skills, almost like a Devin Lloyd kind of thing where he can just move sideline to sideline. He can play the ball. And really, I think that's what the Panthers desperately need. They need a guy in the middle of the field Their secondary had some really good runs, and their defensive line had some really good runs. They've invested so much. Where they haven't invested is linebacker. I think they start fresh and take CJ Allen.
Yeah, it's funny, James, because I'm going right there with you. I think linebacker is the
Wow.
biggest need for the Panthers. I think, CJ Allen has been a starter there since Nakobe Dean, 2 or 3 years. He is just like your standard Georgia linebacker. He's big, he can play the run, the pass, athletic, can do all the things that you want a guy like that to do. Panthers linebacker core has been atrocious. So I think this is best fit for them at number 19. All right. Number 20, Dallas Cowboys. With the Cowboys' last pick, I went linebacker, Sony Styles. To me, you had to stick defense. And with how my board is playing out, I actually have Cassius Howell here. I think he's the best
Really?
pure edge rusher left. And I think that's the biggest need on this Cowboys team. I don't think Jadeveon Clowney can really take that mantle anymore. I think Donovan Ezraku takes a big step forward this year, and you pair him with Cassius Howell, who has very high potential. I think this could be a really good D line with Quinnen Williams, Big O. If they keep Kenny Clark, this could be a really good D line.
I like that pick, but I'm going a little bit of a different route. This is much
Mm-hmm.
more of a hypothetical thing, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I will explain my pick afterwards once
Okay.
I say what it is. And I'm going to take Caleb Lomu, offensive tackle out of
Okay.
Utah here. A lot of people think they're going to go defense, but this is my hypothetical is that they've invested so much in their offensive line, but they have another piece that is very questionable with cap, and that is Terrence Steele.
Terrence Steele. Yep.
They want to make room for big extensions with George Pickens and a
Mm.
couple other guys. They're going to have to cut some cap. Terrence Steele has not necessarily is probably one of the, if not the weakest link on that offensive line. And I think Caleb Lomu fits the bill of what that Cowboys offensive line is. Big interior. But those tackles, Tyler Guyton is like 6 foot, 300 pounds, fast, athletic, good in pass pro. Caleb Lomu is the exact same way. Not an undersized offensive lineman with great athleticism, super quick out on the field. And Jerry Jones loves his offensive linemen. They love to address the trenches. I just think if in this again, if they cut Terrence Steele, this is the way to go. I could obviously definitely see them drafting defense here. But again, I think Dallas prioritizes those offensive linemen. So I do have Caleb Lomu here.
It is interesting. I think this Cowboys offensive line is going to be a very underrated storyline going to next season. They had a situation in the end of the season where Tyler Smith, starting left guard, moved to left tackle after Tyler Guyton's injury, and he played outstanding. I could see a
Yeah.
situation where Tyler Smith moves left tackle full time and Tyler Guyton moves to right tackle. Like there's so many different things that could potentially happen with this Cowboys offensive line. Terrence Steele, cap casualty. There's a lot. So I do really like this pick.
I think it's one that is a little experimental, but I do think it's a
Yeah.
perfect fit. With the Steelers, with the Steelers here, I'm actually going to go with a receiver, and that is KC Concepcion out of Texas A&M.
Okay.
If they bring all signs are pointing to them basically keeping the team and going for one more push as a
Mhm.
group. Keeping Aaron Rodgers, keeping everyone. What was they had a lot of issues. One of their biggest issues by far was every other receiver outside of DK Metcalf. Major, major issues. No one really stepped up, and I think it really hurt Rodgers. I don't think he had as many weapons as he wanted to. And it's kind of like a Rams situation. You have
Mhm.
a big time wide receiver one. What are you really struggling in? Is that slot and that receiver too? Casey Concepcion is probably the best slot receiver behind Makai Lemon. Again, freakishly athletic, super fast, and they like to be creative on that offense. He was lining up at running back. He's a quick, shifty mover that Aaron Rodgers can just dink and dunk. I think if they want to make that push, this is the guy you draft in this position.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to agree with you with wide receiver here. The only difference is with their current roster, to me, Casey Concepcion reminds me a lot of Calvin Austin. A little bit of a smaller receiver, really fast, who they already have. To me, I'm going with somebody a little bit bigger. Denzel Bosinger is 6'4". He's someone that's a smooth route runner. He reminds me a lot of Keenan Allen from the Chargers, and so I'm gonna go with another kind of bigger body wide receiver, but somebody that's very savvy, and
Hmm.
Denzel Boston wide
I like
receiver.
that pick. I think it goes either way. Big
Hmm.
receiver, a little receiver. Just pick a receiver.
Yeah. Um, Pick 22 here, Los Angeles Chargers. To me, their biggest need is interior offensive line. There are some guys here, a couple guys from Penn State, Oregon. To me, I think one of the biggest so far Senior Bowl players have been right here. Ginnings,
Yes.
Dunker,
Okay, I
Iowa.
love that. I
Now,
love that pick.
it does say offense tackle. This guy is a little bit shorter. I mean, not necessarily shorter, but a little bit smaller. 6'5", 315. This is a old school Iowa offensive lineman. I think you can immediately put him at any position. I think he's going to work wonders in that guard spot, no matter what they do with Mekhi Becton over there. But I'm going with Ginnings Dunker, Iowa offensive guard.
I really like that. I am a big fan of Gettings Dunker. I mean, those Iowa offensive linemen are killer.
Yep.
You know what? Also, you know what? I mean, another school that can produce some solid offensive linemen. I'm going to
Hmm.
go with an interior offensive lineman here, but I'm probably going to go with the prototypical interior offensive lineman one, and that is Vega Awane from Penn State.
Okay. Yep.
I mean, 6'4", 323 pounds.
Hmm.
Technically savvy, very physical player. He's dense, big time downhill guy. I mean, he has a background in rugby, but
Yep.
I just think he is the best overall interior offensive lineman here. The Chargers need interior offensive line, and I think
Hmm.
this again is another fantastic match. I feel like they're going to have their pick of those interior offensive linemen. I think he's the guy to go to.
I like it. Pick 23, Philadelphia Eagles. James, who do you have them going for?
Again, I think this is necessarily another kind of a hypothetical thing.
Hmm.
I'm going to go with a position we have not talked about. I'm going to go with Kenyon Sadiq,
I like it. Yep.
tight end out of Philly. Alice Goddard is on the last year of his deal, and I really just don't see him coming back. There have been so many issues with this offense. You don't know if AJ Brown's going to be back. There's been a lot of issues with chemistry. And I think that they really want to spice up that offense. And I think Kenyon Sadiq is a perfect Dallas Goddard replacement, bar none, the best tight end on the board. And it is
Yep.
there's a gap. There is a gap.
For sure.
He is a fantastic receiving tight end, basically kind of like a big receiver that you can play with. I think that's a fun player for Jalen Hurts. And this offense needs some juice. I think he's the perfect guy to bring it.
Yeah, I really like Kenyon Sadiq. I think he's also the best blocking tight end in this group,
Yeah.
which is insane coming from such a productive receiving game. With my board, though, I'm going to go Kendrick Falk here. I think you get a guy that's just a chess piece on the D line. He can line up next to, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. He can line up on the far edge with Nolan Smith. Jalen Phillips is still kind of a question if he's coming back or not. But to me, Kendrick Falk has a lot. I know I kind of mentioned Shamir Stewart, but he also has a lot of like Brandon Graham play style
Yeah.
in his game. So I think you just go and get a guy that is a little bit younger. Is going to absolutely help your defenses. This reminds me of such a Jahad Campbell pick from last year. It's another athletic piece you can play with on your defense.
Yeah, that could be a really interesting one because
Mhm.
extensions with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith are coming up, and then obviously bringing back Jalen Phillips. So I think that's a fantastic pick too.
Yeah.
So
But
what do you got
with
for
my
the Browns?
Yep. Pick 24, Cleveland Browns. I originally went all the way with Cardinal Tate, wide receiver. To me, they stick with wide receiver. I'm going to apologize. They stick with offense. I'm going with Caleb Lamu, the best offensive lineman left from Utah. Typical left tackle. Like we've talked about already, they had so many rotations. DeJuan Jones, Cam Robinson
Yeah,
over left tackle. Both of them have not shown much. DeJuan Jones maybe a little bit of promise, but he's such a big guy that he has trouble on the island. Lamu is a little bit on the smaller side, 6'5", kind of skinnier with 302, but incredible feet. incredible feet, long arms, super strong. No, maybe not as good as his other partner at Utah, but to me, Caleb Lamo is the pick for me.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a guy you mentioned a little bit earlier. I have Denzel Boston here. We're flipping.
Hmm.
You had
Okay,
receiver, then offensive line. I had offensive line. Then I'm going with receiver.
gotcha.
Cedric Tillman, man, has not worked out very well for this offense.
Yeah.
You have Jerry Judy. Why not get a big, smooth, savvy
Hmm.
target like Denzel Boston, a guy who's big, who can move? I could see him really flying up some draft boards with just the
No, for
way
sure.
he plays. But I think this is a perfect landing spot in Cleveland. You get your offensive tackle on
Hmm.
the future, and you also get a wide receiver one or wide receiver two for the future who can just make an immediate impact.
I love it. All right, James, 25th pick of the draft, Chicago Bears. Who do you have them picking?
This is a really I think with the Bears,
Hmm.
their biggest need definitely comes from their defensive line.
Hmm.
Specifically though, in this situation, I have a guy that I think could provide a really perfect solution for them. That is Caden McDonald, defensive tackle
Okay.
out of
Yep.
Ohio State. I could really see them going pass rush here.
Hmm.
But I think Caden McDonald is by far the best run stuffing defensive tackle. The Bears defensive tackles haven't really shown up to play as much. Gravon Dexter, he might be a solid pass rushing defensive tackle, but he hasn't got that breakout point. He gets washed down in the run game.
Hmm.
Caden McDonald is just a brick wall of a defensive lineman. And I think it's kind of like a Detroit thing. And I would not be surprised if they go out and make a big trade for a defensive end, but I just think Cade McDonald is the best available here. I think, again, I could go safety here, but I don't see a lot of good safeties in this position. I think that you go with a brick wall at the defensive tackle, take some ease off of the pass rush and the run game. I think this is a great pick.
Yeah. Funny enough, so I agree with the position, but I'm going with a little bit different player. I'm going with Caleb Banks from Florida.
Yeah,
I,
I
yeah, for sure. Caleb Banks to me is a guy that may not be as good as a run stuffer, but he provides the like legitimate juice in the pass rushing realm over here. I agree. Their D tackles, they spent a lot of money. Grady Jarrett came over and they just have not produced at all. So I agree that they need some help over there.
yeah.
But looking at pick 26, Buffalo Bills. This one, very, very interesting. They can go with a lot of players here. I am looking at the board and I have someone a little bit different. I am going
Okay.
wide receiver Elijah Surratt,
Really?
Indiana. Elijah is a little bit of an older prospect, but to me, this Bills team needs a truly a legitimate boundary wide receiver, and Elijah is just that. Prototypical size 6'2, 209, 210. May not be the fastest. You're not going to see this guy drop many balls. He is so good at making big plays, continuing the routes, finding open spaces in zone. I really like Elijah Surratt here for the Buffalo Bills.
I think that's a fantastic pick.
Hmm.
But again, I'm going a little hypothetical here.
Yep.
In my opinion, I really think the Bills are done. I think this is hard because we have
Hmm.
picked so many receivers off the board. And I really think the Bills are going to take their talents at receiver to a big trade or a market free agent
Okay.
kind of
Yep.
guy.
I like
This
that.
is one I've been really debating, but again, kind of a surprise pick for me. I have Caden Proctor,
Okay.
offensive guard for the Buffalo Bills.
Okay.
Caden Proctor is huge.
Yep.
6'7", like 360.
Yeah, this has him at
6'6", 369.
370. Yeah.
However, people thought he was going to be a tackle, but his footwork doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily translate as an offensive tackle. The Buffalo Bills have overall great offensive tackles with Deion Dawkins. And where
Spencer
they
Brown.
really have struggled is that interior offensive line. Your best guy is probably Osiris Torrance, and he is just okay. I think that the Bills go out and go after a receiver more in the free agent market. You could argue that their pass rush really struggled, but you forget they invested a second and two-thirds in defensive linemen from last year. I think that they go with a position of need, an offense, and that is interior offensive line. And I think they just like maulers. Spencer Brown, Dion Dawkins, physical beasts who just mow people to
Mhm.
the ground. I think Caden Proctor fits that mold and could be a big time juice for that offense.
Yeah, I think Caden Proctor fits that Makai Becton mold really well. I think his footwork is kind of the same situation. It's a little clunky because of how tall and big he is. He does sit really high in his pass sets. I think you move him inside where maybe his speed necessarily does not
Yeah.
affect him as much. I think he's your left guard for the future. I love this pick.
All right, with the Niners, this is one you picked a little bit back ago, but
Hmm.
this is where I have him. I'm going with Avion Terrell here, cornerback out of Clemson. The Niners defense, as much as their injuries really batter them down, their secondary did struggle a
Hmm.
decent amount. I think you have Demondre Lenar, but you needed someone next to him. I think Avion Terrell is the best corner on the board at this point. He was fantastic at Clemson. And I just think, you could argue receiver, but again, I think a lot of the best receivers are off the board at this point.
Hmm.
You could argue offensive line, but I think a lot of the better offensive linemen are off the board at this point. I think they go with a guy like Avion Terrell who can be a really, really good corner too for them.
Yeah, I like this pick. Looking at my board, I have some options here. This 49ers interior offensive line has had some issues. Could definitely see that. They lost Aaron Banks 2 off seasons ago. I could even see Casey Concepcion. I know you took him a little earlier. Yeah, I agree. Their wide receivers are a very interesting group. Brandon Ayuk obviously is not coming back. Ricky Pearsall has dealt with so many injuries. Kendrick Bourne was really good for them this past year. Juan Jennings is very consistent, plus his contract situation's really poor. But to me, looking at this team, I go back and forth. But I'm actually going corner Keith Abney from Arizona
Okay.
State. I think their secondary is very questionable. They lost Charvarius Ward this previous offseason. And their defense, especially with Robert Saleh going to be gone this year, I think it's going to take a big hit. I think they need another good corner back there with Lenore and Green from Florida State. So I'm going with a younger guy, Keith Abney, corner, Arizona State.
Okay.
Now, with the 28th pick, the Houston Texans. Looking at this board, I am not going to think too much about this. I am actually going to go Caden Proctor, and I'm going to assume that they're going to be able to use him as an offensive tackle. If that means moving him to right tackle, or even moving Alante Ursay back to his natural position at right tackle,
Mhm.
I think tackle is a huge need. I don't think Trent Brown is your future there. I think Tyus Howard has solidified himself in the guard position. Ed Ingram played outstanding this year. I think you need one of the two tackle spots. I have Caden Proctor going here.
I've been really back and forth on this
Hmm.
one because it is very hard for me to kind of decide who I want to take here.
Hmm.
But this is interesting. I'm going to take offensive tackle Monroe Freeling from Georgia.
From Georgia. Uh-huh.
Yeah. He, I mean,
Hmm.
again, massive player. He's 6'6", 315. Again, I think Caden Proctor's much more of a interior guy. And I think Monroe Fleming is a perfect left tackle for them. A
Hmm.
big, big dude, super physical. He's very, very athletic. Has a little bit of struggles with some of his run blocking, but again, big time Georgia offensive tackle. I was really considering Jennings Dunker here. I don't know why for me he's been dropping, but I just think Freeling fits more of like a Houston Texans mold of an offensive
Yeah.
lineman.
No, I like that big offensive tackle especially is such a huge need. I think both of these guys, really Monroe Freeling and Caden Proctor, you can move inside and out. That's because of their athleticism. And I think they just need one final piece to solidify, one or two pieces left to solidify the offensive line. But
Yeah.
James, pick 29, Los Angeles Rams. Your last pick for the Rams because of the Falcons, you picked wide receiver Makai Lemon. Who are you going to pick with pick number 29?
Yeah, this is a really hard one for me. I'm going to go with a guy that you picked earlier, and that is Keith Abney the second.
Okay.
I think they need corner in this position
Mhm.
really bad. He's perfect, and he's really great in man and zone. He just he maybe gets a little bit beat with some of the bigger physical guys, but I just think he is a really perfect fit. Stay on the West Coast with him, man. Get a guy
Yeah,
from the West Coast to come in and play some really good corner ball. And I think the Rams really need to get one of the top corners off the board, and that to me is Keith Abney.
I like it. With my Rams pick, so my previous Rams pick, I picked Avion Taylor corner. So with this pick, you can truly make an argument here of going corner again. To me, looking at this team, offensive line is such a big issue for me. I'm gonna go now. I might need you to help me pronounce his name. The guard from Penn State
If
play the
they get one
interior.
name.
Yep, I'm gonna take him to play that interior. Um, they potentially found their center, but they've rotated between Jonah Jackson the last few years and so many players at interior. Then you can get yourself a true stalwart mate here and help out the run game that's kind of struggled this year.
Yeah, I really considered offensive linemen with the Rams for a while, but I really do think that they are going to be a little more relaxed with some of that. I think they ran into a lot of injuries. They have a good, to me, they have a really good guard duo in Steve
Hmm.
Avila and Kevin Dotson. But
Yep.
I do think Wane is probably one of the best off interior offensive linemen on the board. That'd be a great pick for them.
Yeah, and I
Josh,
agree with you. Real quick, I mean, what injuries have been such a huge part of this offensive line, and Steve Avila has been playing great. Devon Dawson's contract's coming up pretty soon. I could potentially see a maybe a more of a lateral move to free up some money this
yeah,
upcoming offseason to be able to make a bigger trade or bigger acquisition to put him above that line in this
yeah, I like
next
that.
season. But yeah, pick 30, Denver Broncos. This one to me is tough. I'm in between two players here, but with how my board set up, I'm looking at Kenyon Sadiq. I know for you, he went a little bit earlier. I think their tight ends have been very underwhelming. Evan Ingram is, I believe, 32 at this point, um, and it's just not a blocker. And Kenyon Sadiq comes in, it automatically upgrade both in the run game, pass game, everything. I think Kenyon Sadiq is the perfect player to really help Bo Nix out in the future and
I
and
yeah,
present.
I think that would be a slam dunk pick for Denver if they
Hmm.
were able to get him. But for me, I'm going to go with a position of a big positional need for them at this point. That is linebacker. I'm going to go with
Hmm.
Jake Golday from Cincinnati,
I like
six
it.
foot four, 240-pound frame from Cincinnati, extremely explosive, maybe a more under the radar kind of guy, but he has the measurements. He has struggled a little bit more
Hmm.
in like overall development, but the guy's a freak of nature. Denver is really, could lose two of their starting linebackers this
Yep.
season in Alex Singleton and Justin Stronard. Pair this guy next to Dre Greenlock, get him some tape. I think this is a great pick for Denver.
I like it. Jake Goldé is one of the most explosive linebackers in this draft, and I love this pick here. Pick number 31, New England Patriots. Who do you now? Real quick, these last two picks. Obviously, this game, the Super Bowl has
Yeah.
not been played yet, so they might flip flop. But as of this prediction, who do you have? Pick 31, New England Patriots.
This is a hard one, but I do think I have my guy, and that is Cassius Howell from Texas A&M, defensive end. I think the Patriots can afford to have that developmental guy at that defensive end position. Really, again, freaking nature defensive lineman, super athletic, very physical in run game, but has his weaknesses with pass rush. They invested a lot in that pass rush, but I really think that that interior defensive line has been doing a lot of work. They need kind of
I
a
love it.
young guy on the outside, a developmental piece with all those guys they
Hmm.
brought in, someone you can work for over time. Now, I will say, the reason I think he drops a lot for me is, freakishly athletic defensive end doesn't really have the numbers in pass rush coming from Texas A&M. Shamar Stewart, people are
Yeah.
gonna be scared by that, and I think This is what I worry about with this defensive line class. You do have those developmental guys.
Hmm.
So I think Shamar Stewart's going to scare some people, but I think the coaching staff like Mike Vrabel, I think this is a solid fit, a guy you can develop and you could afford to develop in the future.
Yeah, I love the position. Obviously, on my board, Cassius Howell was already taken by the Bucks. I'm gonna go with another guy that has been outstanding at the Senior Bowl as of right now. Defensive end Zion Young from Missouri. Now, Zion Young has had some fantastic years. A big issue and things are going to come up during his pre-draft process is a DUI that he happened to have on his record. So, that's obviously not something you want to have, but I think just his ability so far, he's been such a consistent starter. And I think this is such a huge need for the Patriots. I think this is a perfect fit for Zion Young.
I love that. Love that pick.
Now, pick 32 in this hypothetical, Seattle Seahawks have the last pick. This one I've changed, I can't tell you how many times.
Yeah.
And I think this is such a Seattle Seahawks player. Where is it? Jacob Rodriguez.
Yes, that is. I love that.
Now, to me, they picked, Nick Imamori last year. Jacob Rodriguez fits that mold of a player. He may not be a consistent starter, but he is going to work his way on the step chart. He's going to come in and immediately make such a high impact of turning the ball over. He had like 4 interceptions and like 6 forced fumbles last year, won every award. Now, his fit as a linebacker is a little questionable. He's not very good at taking on blocks. His run defense is not fantastic, but talking about pass coverage, I love Jacob Rodriguez. He's doing outstanding so far in the Senior Bowl. I think in the game, either yesterday or the day before, he had a forced fumble and an interception.
Hmm.
I think this Mike McDonald defense is going to find a place for Jacob Rodriguez.
I have kind of a similar thing, but a little bit
Hmm.
different. I'm going to go with Brandon Cisse out of
Okay.
North
Yep.
Carolina, cornerback.
Hmm.
Super physical, press man, twitchy corner. They need it. They
Yeah.
really do need it. Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant are both, expiring contracts. And Seattle likes those physical corners, Tariq Woolen, kind of the same thing, jumpy. Wait, who's his
Devon
teammate?
Witherspoon.
Who's his teammate? Nick Emanwari.
Yep.
You have that connection. I think pairing him up with Nick Emanwari could be wonders for this Seattle team that is desperate for secondary. Again, I think Cisse is a really physical, maybe a little too physical, jumpy and
Hmm.
grabby press corner. And I think that fits perfectly with the Seattle defense. And I think he is the last pick in the NFL draft. And Josh, that concludes the
Wow.
Goal Line Guys' first ever mock draft.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We have a lot of kind of the same fits, positions, even players all over this draft board between the two of us. No, just looking on this Peter Woods, TJ Parker, Ty Simpson, obviously the our first 2 picks in this draft. Jeremiah Love down there. This is fun. This is
This
the
is
best to
awesome,
me,
man.
one of my favorite times of football. Obviously, as the season continues or offseason officially starts, we'll have more coming out. Maybe some with potential trades. We might even do something where we do like skill players only. Kind of have a lot to go through here. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be an amazing
This
draft,
is
I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really good prospects. I think this class is not deep in quarterback, but is deep in a lot of different positions. And the thing with this is because there's really not the best quarterback outside of that quarterback one. It is so hard to predict because you just don't know how the board is going to fall past the first overall pick. The first overall pick to me is the only guaranteed pick in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, we could see situations where a team falls in love with Drew Aller's size. We could see a
God.
situation where, a team really likes Garrett Nussmeier. Like
Oh God.
Trinidad Chamberlain could actually enter
Oh
the draft
God.
and figure out his whole NIL or NCAA situation. Like, there are so many different possibilities in this draft, and that's why we love the draft because you are always going to have the craziest situations happening. Teams going to fall in love with one player, doesn't matter where he's at on the draft board. they might just take him. So
Yeah.
you just never know. But
Yeah, man. But another great episode with my man, Josh. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Make sure to check out the socials. Let us know what you guys think of our draft boards and who had the better draft board, too. I'd like to see if anyone thinks
yeah,
that.
you know,
But thank you so
also
much.
also let us know if we, completely screwed up your team by drafting a player that
Yeah,
A, you
let us
don't
know if we
like,
screwed you guys over.
B, you love, C, or you just don't know
Uh,
and want to learn more about them. But let us know. But yeah, like James just said, follow all the social medias, YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok. Yeah. And James,
thank Yeah, I will see you next week, Josh.
yeah, I will see you next week, James. All right. We'll get into some Super Bowl predictions, talk about that a little bit next week.
It'll be a lot
All
of fun,
right.
man. It's going to be a hell of
Gonna
a
be a lot of
time.
fun.
But you have a good rest of your day, Josh.
All right. You too, James. Have a good week. All
You
right.
too.
See you next time.
See ya.